The Alpha of the Black River Pack thought a heavy iron lock and a basement door were enough to hide his dirty secret. He thought he could bury Lorelei in the dark while he entertained royalty upstairs. He was wrong. He didn't account for the fact that true power doesn't rely on sight. It relies on instinct. And he certainly didn't account for the Alpha King, a man known for tearing kingdoms apart to find what belongs to him. Tonight the music stops, the wine glasses shatter, and the king is about to ask the one question that will destroy an entire pack. Where is she? Stay tuned. This is the story of how a rejected Omega brought a king to his knees. The air in the pack house kitchen smelled of roasted venison, heavy cream, and the sharp metallic tang of anxiety. It was the eve of the lunar solstice, the night the Alpha King Kingston would grace the Black River Pack with his presence to host the regional mating ceremony. For every wolf in the territory, this was the event of the decade. For Lorelei, it was just another Tuesday of scrubbing grease until her knuckles bled. Lorelei pushed a stray lock of dark hair behind her ear, her hands submerged in scalding dishwater. The steam curled around her face, softening the harsh lines of exhaustion that had settled under her eyes. She wasn't old, barely 22, but life under Alpha Barrett's regime had aged her soul. "Mr. Spot," a voice sneered from behind her. Lorelei didn't flinch. She knew that voice. Sloane, the Alpha's daughter, and the pack's self-proclaimed queen of torment. Lorelei scrubbed harder at the silver platter, not turning around. "It's clean, Sloane." "It's clean when I say it's clean, Omega." Sloane stepped closer, her heels clicking ominously on the tile. With a casual flick of her wrist, she tipped a glass of red wine onto the floor, the crimson liquid splashing onto the hem of Lorelei's fraying grey dress. "Oops, now the floor is dirty too. Better get on that before my father sees." Lorelei closed her eyes for a heartbeat, inhaling deeply. She counted to 3. 1, 2, 3. Survival was a numbers game. You took the abuse, you did the work, and you stayed invisible. That was the rule since her parents died in the border skirmishes 10 years ago, leaving her with no protection, and a bloodline Barrett claimed was weak. "I'll clean it," Lorelei said, her voice devoid of emotion. The kitchen door swung open with a violent thud. The chatter of the kitchen staff died instantly. Alpha Barrett filled the doorway. He was a large man, broad-shouldered and thick-necked, with a face that looked like it had been carved from granite and resentment. He wore a tuxedo that strained against his bulk, his face flushed with stress. "Why is there wine on the floor?" Barrett barked his eyes, scanning the room before landing on Lorelei. "You clumsy bitch. It was an accident, Alpha." Sloane lied smoothly, leaning against the counter. "Lorelei tripped. I told her to be more careful." Barrett stormed over, grabbing Lorelei by the chin. His grip was bruising. He forced her to look up at him. "Do you have any idea who is coming tonight, King Kingston? The most ruthless wolf on the continent. If he sees one speck of dust, one incompetent Omega, he will tear my status, specifically. I will not let you embarrass me." "I won't, Alpha," Lorelei whispered, staring at a button on his jacket to avoid eye contact. "I'll stay in the kitchen. I'll be invisible." Barrett sneered, releasing her with a shove that sent her stumbling back against the sink. "Oh, you'll be invisible, all right." "Gunner." The pack beta gunner stepped out from the hallway. He was a quiet, hulking man who followed orders with terrifying precision. "Take her to the cellar," Barrett commanded, adjusting his cufflinks. "Lock her in the old coal storage." Lorelei's head snapped up. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced her chest. "The coal storage, Alpha, please. The ventilation is broken down there. It's freezing. And the ceremony. Every wolf is required to attend the mating call. It's pack law. I am the law in Black River, Barrett snarled, leaning down into her face. And you are not a pack member tonight. You are a liability. You have no wolf, Lorelei. You haven't shifted in 4 years. You are a defect. Do you think the Alpha King wants to smell a defect while he's looking for his queen? I have a wolf, Lorelei argued, her voice trembling. She's just... Quiet. She's dead, Barrett said cruelly. Just like your parents. Now get her out of my sight. If I see her face before the king leaves tomorrow morning, Gunnar, you have permission to break her legs. Sloane smirked, sipping the remains of her wine, as Gunnar grabbed Lorelei by the arm. The grip was iron tight. Please, Lorelei begged, digging her heels into the tile. I need to feel the moon tonight. Even if I don't find a mate, I need the moonlight. You'll get the dark, Barrett said, turning his back on her. Take her. As she was dragged through the corridors past the grand ballroom, being decorated with white lilies and velvet ribbons, Lorelei felt a strange pull in her chest. It wasn't fear. It was an ache, a magnetic tug toward the front gates. Someone was coming. Someone who tasted like ozone and storm clouds. But before she could understand the sensation, she was thrown into the damp darkness of the cellar. The heavy iron door slammed shut, the lock clicked, and Lorelei was left in the pitch black while the world above her prepared for a celebration of love. The ballroom of the Black River Pack House was a spectacle of excess. Crystal chandeliers vibrated with the bass of the string quartet. Women in silk gowns of crimson, emerald, and gold twirled in the arms of potential mates. The air was thick with pheromones, the sweet, cloying sense of hundreds of wolves looking to bond. But for King Kingston, it smelled like desperation. Kingston stood on the mezzanine balcony, looking down at the crowd, with eyes the color of molten gold. He was a man of imposing stature, standing 6'5", with raven black hair and a jawline that could cut glass. He wore a suit of charcoal black, no tie, the top button undone to reveal the faint edge of a tribal tattoo on his collarbone. He didn't want to be here. He had visited 12 packs in 3 months, 12 ceremonies, 12 disappointments. The oracle had told him his mate was waiting in the west, but every time he entered a ballroom, he felt nothing. Just the hollow emptiness that had plagued him for 30 years. Your Majesty. A voice oiled with false humility spoke from his side. Kingston didn't look over. He knew it was Alpha Barrett. The man smelled of cheap cologne and deep-seated insecurity. The party is to your liking, Barrett asked, wringing his hands. We imported the wine from Italy, and the venison is fresh from the hunt this morning. Kingston took a sip of his bourbon, his gaze boring into the crowd. It's adequate, Barrett. A bit loud. Barrett paled. I can have the band stop. I can leave it. Kingston commanded his voice, a low rumble that vibrated in Barrett's chest. I'm not here for the music. You know why I'm here. Of course, Barrett nodded vigorously. To bless our unions, and perhaps to find your own. Kingston finally turned to look at the Alpha. His expression was unreadable, but the sheer weight of his aura made Barrett take a half step back. My wolf is restless tonight, Barrett. He's pacing. He hates this place. Barrett swallowed hard. Hates the decorations. He hates the lies, Kingston said cryptically. He turned back to the balcony. The air here feels stagnant, like you're hiding something. Hiding. Barrett laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. We hide nothing from our king. The Black River Pack is an open book. Every eligible female is in this room. My own daughter Sloane. She's wearing the red dress near the fountain. She has been training to be a Luna her entire life." Kingston glanced at Sloane. She was beautiful objectively. She was laughing loudly, tossing her hair, clearly performing for his benefit. Kingston felt nothing. Actually, he felt mild irritation. "She smells like vanilla perfume," Kingston noted dryly. "Too much of it." Suddenly Kingston froze. His hand tightened on the balcony railing, the wood creaking under his grip. A breeze had drifted in. It wasn't from the open terrace doors. It was coming from the floor vents, a draught rising from the bowels of the house. It was faint, buried under the stench of perfume and sweat, but it was there. It smelled like rain hitting hot asphalt, like rust and wild lavender. It smelled like home. His wolf, usually dormant and brooding, slammed against his ribcage. Mine. Kingston's pupils dilated, swallowing the gold. He dropped the glass of bourbon. It shattered on the floor, the sound cutting through the music like a gunshot. The entire ballroom went silent. "Your Majesty?" Barrett asked, trembling. Kingston ignored him. He inhaled deeply, his nostrils flaring. The scent was distressed. It was sour with fear and damp with mold. "Who is missing?" Kingston asked. His voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the silent room. Barrett blinked. "Missing no one, Your Majesty. Everyone is here. I took roll call myself." Kingston turned slowly to face Barrett. The air around the king began to distort the sheer pressure of his dominance, making the wolves nearby drop to their knees. "Don't lie to me, Barrett." Kingston growled, his voice shifting into a dual timbre man and wolf speaking as one. "I smell her. She is in this house, but she is not in this room." Barrett was sweating profusely now. Surely you are mistaken. Perhaps it's a servant, a kitchen maid. They aren't worthy of the ceremony. Every wolf is worthy of the mating rite." Kingston roared. The windows rattled in their frames. "You are keeping my mate from me." The crowd gasped. Whispers erupted like wildfire. "The king's mate here in Black River." Motiteu. Barrett looked like he was about to faint. If the king's mate was the girl he had just locked in the coal cellar, he was a dead man. He had to pivot. He had to cover this up. "Ah," Barrett stammered. There is one. But she is sick. Your Majesty, very contagious. A madness of the mind. We keep her isolated for her own safety. You wouldn't want to see her. She is a defect." Kingston stepped forward, grabbing Barrett by the lapels of his tuxedo and lifting him 6 inches off the floor. "If she is sick," Kingston whispered lethally, "then I will heal her. If she is mad, I will soothe her. But if you have locked her away like an animal—" He dropped Barrett. "Lead the way. Now." The procession down to the kitchens was a parade of terror. Alpha Barrett led the way, his legs shaking. Behind him strode King Kingston, a predator on the hunt, flanked by his elite guards. Behind them, the entire party followed, at a distance, morbid curiosity overcoming their fear. They reached the kitchen. The staff pressed themselves against the walls, heads bowed, terrified to look the king in the eye. The scent was stronger here, rain, lavender, and something else, salt, tears. "She is crying," Kingston's wolf howled in his mind. "Protect. Kill the threat." Kingston stopped in the center of the kitchen. He spun around his eyes, locking onto the heavy iron door in the corner. It was barred and padlocked. "Open it," Kingston commanded. Barrett fumbled for his keys. "Your Majesty, really, it's just the coal chute. It's dirty. She's not clothed properly." "Open the door." Barrett's hands were shaking so badly he dropped the keys. Kingston lost his patience. With a snarl, the king stepped forward. He didn't bother with the key. He grabbed the iron handle of the reinforced door. Muscles coiled under his suit jacket. With a roar of exertion, he ripped the handle clean off, shattering the locking mechanism. He kicked the door. It flew inward, banging against the stone wall. Kingston stepped into the darkness. "Come out," he said, his voice instantly softening. "I won't hurt you." For a long moment there was silence, then a shuffle in the corner. Lorelei stepped into the sliver of light from the kitchen. She looked catastrophic. Her grey dress was stained with wine and coal dust. Her hair was matted. Her face was smudged with black soot, and fresh tear tracks cut through the grime. She was shivering violently from the cold. She squinted against the light, her eyes adjusting. When she saw the silhouette of the man in the doorway, her breath hitched. The bond didn't snap into place. It crashed into her like a tidal wave. It was an ancient, terrifying connection that buckled her knees. Kingston stared at her. To everyone else, she was a dirty, broken Omega. To him, she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. He saw the fire in her eyes that the abuse hadn't managed to extinguish. He fell to his knees. The king of all werewolves kneeling on a dirty cellar floor. "You," he breathed. Lorelei trembled, pressing her back against the cold stone wall. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "I didn't mean to offend the king. I'll stay quiet. Please don't let Barrett hurt me." Kingston's head snapped up. The gold in his eyes turned to blood red. He looked over his shoulder at Barrett, who was cowering by the dishwashers. "Hurt you?" Kingston asked, his voice calm, a deadly, unnatural calm. "Barrett has hurt you." He said I was a stain," Lorelei stammered. "That I was banned." Kingston stood up. He reached out a hand to Lorelei. "Take my hand." Lorelei hesitated. She looked at her own hand, covered in coal dust and scars from scrubbing steel wool. Then she looked at his manicured, strong, powerful. "I'll dirty you," she said. "You could cover me in mud and I would thank you for it," Kingston vowed. He reached forward and gently took her hand. He pulled her out of the darkness and into the kitchen light. He pulled her into his chest. The contact sent sparks flying through both of them. Kingston buried his nose in her neck, inhaling the soot and the lavender. Then he turned to the room. He kept one arm wrapped possessively around Lorelei's waist, shielding her from the crowd. He looked at Alpha Barrett. "You banned her," Kingston said. "You threw my queen into a coal cellar." Barrett fell to his knees. "Your Majesty, I didn't know. She's an Omega. She has no parents. She's nobody. She is everything," Kingston roared. The power of his voice cracked the plaster on the ceiling. "And you," Kingston pointed a finger at Barrett, "you have just declared war on the crown." Kingston looked down at Lorelei. "What is your name, little one?" "Lorelei," she whispered. "Lorelei." Kingston tested the name. "Tonight you leave this pack. Tonight you come home." "But," Lorelei looked at the terrified crowd. "Barrett said I'm a defect. My bloodline is weak." Kingston laughed, a dark, humorless sound. He looked at Barrett. "Weak, you fool. You didn't sense it. You beat it down so deep you couldn't feel it." Kingston looked at the crowd. "She isn't an Omega. The bond tells me everything. This girl is a dormant Alpha, and by the laws of the king..." Kingston glared at Barrett. "She outranks you." The room erupted into chaos, but Lorelei didn't hear it. All she felt was the warmth of the king's hand, and for the first time in 10 years, the feeling that she was safe. The silence in the kitchen following King Kingston's declaration was heavy enough to crush lungs. "She outranks you." The words bounced off the stainless steel counters, echoing in the minds of everyone present. Alpha Barrett remained on his knees, his face a mask of shock that was quickly curdling into panic. He watched as Kingston, lifted Lorelei into his arms, carrying her bridal style, as if she weighed nothing more than a feather. "We are leaving," Kingston announced, his voice vibrating with finality. "Do not follow us." "Wait." A shrill voice shattered the moment. Sloane pushed through the line of cowering kitchen staff, her face blotchy with rage. She pointed a manicured finger at Lorelei, who was pressed tight against Kingston's chest, trying to hide her soot-stained face. "You can't just take her," Sloane shrieked. "She's a servant. She has debts. My father paid for her upbringing after her parents died. She owes the Black River Pack 10 years of labor to repay the cost of her food and shelter." Kingston stopped. He turned slowly, his expression devoid of humanity. He looked at Sloane not as a woman, but as an insect buzzing near his ear. "Debts," Kingston repeated softly. "Yes, debts." Barrett scrambled to his feet, sensing a lifeline. He smoothed his suit, trying to regain some semblance of authority. "My daughter is right, Your Majesty. Legally, Lorelei is an indentured ward of this pack. You cannot simply abduct a pack member who is under contract. It's against the council law of autonomy. Even the king must respect pack finances." Barrett smiled, a greasy, triumphant expression. He thought he had him. He thought the law would protect him from the monster in the suit. Kingston looked down at Lorelei. "Is this true? Did you sign a contract?" Lorelei shivered the warmth of the king's body, the only thing keeping her grounded. I was 12, she whispered, her voice trembling. "Barrett said if I didn't sign it, he would throw me into the rogue lands. I didn't know what it meant." Kingston nodded once. He shifted Lorelei's weight to one arm, reached into the inside pocket of his jacket, and pulled out a checkbook. "Gunner," Kingston said, addressing the large beta who had dragged Lorelei to the cellar earlier. Gunner flinched, looking terrified. Yes, Your Majesty. What is the estimated value of an Omega's labor for 10 years? "Oh," Gunner stammered, doing the math. "Maybe 200,000, including interest, oh?" Kingston pulled a gold fountain pen from his pocket. He uncapped it with his teeth, scrawled a number onto the check, ripped it out, and let it flutter to the floor at Barrett's feet. 5 million, Kingston said coldly. "That buys her debt. It buys the house she grew up in. It buys the silence of this pack, and it buys me the right to kill you if you ever speak her name again." Barrett stared at the check, his greed warring with his fear. 5 million was more than the pack earned in a decade. Now, Kingston's eyes flashed with a dangerous, predatory light. "If you mention the law to me one more time while standing in a kitchen where you enslave children, I will rip your throat out right here on this tile. Do we have an understanding?" Barrett couldn't speak. He just nodded, sweat dripping from his nose. Kingston turned and walked out. The walk to the motorcade was a blur for Lorelei. She buried her face in the king's neck, inhaling the scent of arraign and ozone, trying to block out the stares of the pack members lining the hallway. They whispered as she passed the girl they had spat on, the girl they had tripped in the hallways, now being carried like a porcelain doll by the most powerful wolf in the world. Kingston didn't stop until they reached his personal vehicle, a massive armored black SUV with tinted windows. His driver, a stoic woman named Jinx, opened the back door. Kingston settled Lorelei onto the leather seats. The interior was warm, smelling of cedar and expensive leather. He climbed in beside her, signaling Jinx to drive. As the car pulled away from the Black River estate, leaving the nightmare behind, Lorelei felt the adrenaline crash. Her body began to shake violently. The cold of the cellar, the shock of the bond, and the terror of the confrontation caught up with her all at once. "Breathe," Kingston said gently. He didn't crowd her. He sat on the opposite seat, giving her space, but his eyes never left her face. He reached into a cooler and pulled out a bottle of water and a protein bar. "You need to eat." Lorelei took the water with trembling hands. "Why?" she asked, her voice cracking. "Why did you pay him? I'm not worth 5 million. I'm just Lorelei." Kingston leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "You are my mate, Lorelei. That makes you the queen of the 7 regions. You are worth kingdoms. And—" He hesitated, his expression darkening. "Barrett was lying about the debt, but I paid him to lull him into a false sense of security." "Security?" Lorelei frowned, taking a small bite of the protein bar. It tasted like chocolate and salvation. "He thinks I bought your freedom and that the matter is closed," Kingston explained. "He thinks he is rich and safe. That will make him sloppy. And when I destroy him, I want him to be surprised." Lorelei looked at this man, this stranger who spoke of destruction and safety in the same breath. "You think he's going to do something else?" "Men like Barrett are like cornered rats," Kingston said. "He knows that you are a dormant alpha. He knows that if your wolf wakes up, you might remember things. Things about your parents." Lorelei froze. "My parents died in a border skirmish. Rogues attacked the eastern line." Kingston studied her, his golden eyes piercing. "Is that what you remember? Or is that what you were told?" A sharp pain spiked behind Lorelei's eyes. A flash of memory green, light the smell of gunpowder, and a voice laughing. Not a rogue voice. A familiar voice. Lorelei grabbed her head. "I don't know." "Rest now," Kingston said, moving to sit beside her. He wrapped a heavy cashmere blanket around her shoulders. "We have a 4-hour drive to the Obsidian Peaks. Sleep. No one can touch you here." Lorelei wanted to ask more, but the warmth of the blanket and the hum of the engine were hypnotic. For the first time in her life, she didn't have to keep one eye open. She leaned her head against the window, and within seconds she was asleep. But Kingston didn't sleep. He watched the rearview mirror. "Jinx," he said quietly. "I see them, sir." The driver replied, her eyes flicking to the side mirror. 2 sedans, no plates, following at a half-mile distance. "Barrett's mercenaries," Kingston growled low in his throat. He didn't waste any time. "Orders." "Let them follow," Kingston said, his hand resting protectively on Lorelei's sleeping form. "Wait until we cross the border into my territory. Then run them off the road." The Obsidian Peaks were nothing like the damp forested lowlands of Black River. They were jagged mountains that scraped the sky, capped with snow even in summer. Nestled in the center of a massive valley lay the King's estate, a sprawling fortress of glass and black stone that looked both ancient and futuristically impenetrable. Lorelei woke as the SUV slowed down. She blinked, disoriented. The car was moving through massive iron gates. Guards in tactical gear bowed their heads as the vehicle passed. "We're home," Kingston said softly. "Home." The word felt foreign in her mouth. When the car stopped, Kingston didn't let her walk. He carried her again, ignoring her weak protests, sweeping her through the grand foyer. Servants stopped and stared, but unlike in Black River, there was no malice in their eyes, only awe. The King had returned, and he brought a mate. He took her straight to the medical wing. "I don't need a doctor," Lorelei insisted, as he set her down on a sterile white bed. "I just need a bath and maybe some soup." "You need both," a new voice said. A tall man with spectacles and a kind face entered the room. He wore a white coat over casual clothes. This was Dr. Vaughan, the royal healer. "But first I need to check your vitals. You look like you've gone 12 rounds with a reaper." Kingston stepped back, crossing his arms, hovering like a protective gargoyle. She was kept in a coal cellar, malnourished, and Barrett claimed she is a defect. No shift in 4 years. Dr. Vaughan frowned, pulling out a scanner. No shift at 22. That's unheard of for a wolf with alpha blood. He ran the scanner over Lorelei's body. It hummed, turning from green to an angry, flashing red. Vaughan's face went pale. He looked at Kingston, then back at the machine. "Out!" Vaughan said to the nurses in the room. "Everyone out. Now." Kingston stepped forward, the air around him growing cold. "What is it?" Vaughan waited until the door clicked shut. He lowered his voice. "It's not a natural defect, Majesty. It's suppression." "Suppression?" Lorelei asked, her heart hammering. "Your blood shows high traces of aconite and silver nitrate," Vaughan explained grimly. "But not in lethal doses. It's been microdosed. Someone has been poisoning you, Lorelei. Likely putting it in your food or water for years. It's a chemical cocktail designed to keep a wolf in a coma awake enough to live but too weak to manifest." Lorelei put a hand to her mouth. "The vitamins," she whispered. "Sloane. She used to give me vitamins every morning. She said I was anemic." Kingston's growl shook the medical equipment. A glass beaker on the shelf cracked. "They poisoned her. If she shifts now," Vaughan warned, "it's going to be violent. The wolf has been caged and drugged for years. When the chemicals wear off, the rebound will be agony." "How do we clear it?" Kingston demanded. "A transfusion and rest. But the mate bond is accelerating her metabolism. It's burning through the poison faster than I can flush it. She's going to shift, Kingston. Soon. Maybe tonight." As if on cue, Lorelei gasped. Her back arched off the bed, a sound of cracking bone echoing in the silent room. "It's starting," Vaughan shouted. "Hold her down. If she thrashes, she'll break her own spine." Kingston was there in an instant. He climbed onto the bed, pinning Lorelei's shoulders with his weight, but being careful not to crush her. "Look at me, Lorelei," Kingston commanded, his voice fighting through her haze of pain. "Focus on my eyes. It hurts!" she screamed. It felt like her bones were being pulverized and rearranged. The heat was unbearable. It felt like she was burning from the inside out. "I know," Kingston soothed, brushing the sweaty hair off her forehead. "I know. But you have to let her out. She's been fighting to protect you. Let her out!" Lorelei screamed again, her eyes rolling back. Her iris shifted the dull brown, melting away to reveal a brilliant, piercing violet. Dr. Vaughan gasped. "Violet eyes, that's impossible!" Kingston finished staring in shock. Violet eyes were a myth. They belonged to the moon, blessed the ancient lineage of wolves who were said to be direct descendants of the first Alpha, a lineage that was supposed to be extinct, a lineage that had the right to rule not just a pack, but the entire species. Lorelei's body convulsed one last time. A blinding flash of light filled the room, blowing out the overhead bulbs. When the spots cleared from Kingston's vision, Lorelei was gone. In her place, on the shredded hospital sheets, lay a wolf. She was massive. Even malnourished, her frame was larger than an average male alpha. But it was her fur that stole the breath from Kingston's lungs. She wasn't grey or black. She was pure starlight silver, and on her forehead, distinct and dark against the pale fur, was a marking shaped like a crescent moon. The wolf whined, disoriented, shaking her massive head. She looked at Kingston with those violet eyes blinking. "Kingston." Her voice projected into his mind. It was clear, strong, and terrifyingly powerful. Kingston slowly reached out a hand. The massive silver wolf nudged her nose into his palm. "My God," Vaughan whispered, backing against the wall. "She's not just an Alpha, Kingston. She's a royal. She's the true heir. Kingston stroked the silver fur, his mind racing. If Barrett knew this, if Barrett knew who she really was, that explained why he killed her parents. He didn't just want their land. He wanted to extinguish the royal bloodline to ensure his own mediocrity could never be challenged. She is the rightful owner of the Black River lands. Kingston said, his voice hard. And the Northern Territories. And the East. I remember Lorelei's wolf voice echoed in his head. The sadness in the link was profound. I remember the gun. I remember Barrett holding the smoking pistol. He laughed. He told my father, "Kings bleed just like dogs." Kingston's jaw tightened until it hurt. He executed a royal. Suddenly the intercom on the wall buzzed, breaking the heavy atmosphere. "Your Majesty." It was the head of security. "I apologize for the interruption, but we have a situation at the gate." "I'm busy," Kingston snapped, not looking away from the silver wolf. "Sir, it's the High Council. They are here with a warrant." Kingston froze. "A warrant?" "Yes, sir. Elder Godfrey is here personally. He says you are under arrest for the kidnapping of a minor and the violation of the Pack Autonomy Treaty. Barrett has filed a formal charge." Kingston laughed. It was a dark, terrifying sound. "He filed a charge." Kingston looked at the silver wolf. She bared her teeth, a low growl rumbling in her chest that vibrated through the floorboards. "Let them in," Kingston said to the intercom. "Take them to the throne room." He looked at Lorelei. "Can you shift back?" "I think so," she replied. "Good," Kingston said, "because we aren't going to hide you. Barrett wants a trial. He wants to play games with the law." Kingston walked to the door, his eyes burning with golden fire. "We are going to give him a trial, but he's not going to like the verdict." The air in the throne room of the Obsidian Peaks felt suffocating, thick with the scent of fear dust and stale bureaucracy. The vast hall with its intimidating skulls lining the walls and the polished black marble reflecting the ceiling lights was designed to emphasize the king's absolute authority. Yet in the center, a confrontation was unfolding that threatened the stability of the entire hierarchy. King Kingston sat on his throne, his powerful frame radiating a calculated calm that was far more unnerving than a show of temper. He wore the expression of a man forced to attend a tedious meeting. He tapped his finger softly against the black granite armrest. Tap, tap, tap. The sound echoed unnaturally loud in the silence. Elder Godfrey, the chief representative of the High Council, stood stiffly before the throne. He was a withered man whose eyes held the cold, detached gaze of a political schemer. He unrolled the official warrant, the parchment rustling like dead leaves. "King Kingston." Godfrey began, his voice dry and devoid of warmth. "You stand accused of multiple violations, the most egregious of which is the breach of Article 4, the Pack Autonomy Treaty. You entered the sovereign territory of the Black River Pack, assaulted a ranking Alpha, caused extensive damage, and abducted a legally indentured member." Alpha Barrett stood beside Godfrey, his face slick with sweat, beneath a veneer of arrogant confidence. He wore a crisp, expensive suit, playing the part of the wronged sovereign. "My lord, the evidence is insurmountable," Barrett chimed in, stepping forward without invitation. "I demand compensation, but more importantly, I demand the girl's immediate return. That Omega is not only under contract, but she is regrettably mentally unstable. I was containing her for the public good and for her own safety. By bringing her here, you have recklessly endangered the entire regional summit." Kingston stopped tapping. He leaned forward, his golden eyes narrowing, yet his tone remained dangerously measured. "You keep using words like abduction and debt, Barrett. I prefer honesty. I found her cold. I found her hungry. She looked cold and hungry, but she looked remarkably sane, considering the years you spent tormenting her." Barrett bristled. "Torment, I fed her, I clothed her. She owes me her life, Your Majesty. This is not about kindness. It is about law. Even the king must respect legal precedents regarding pack finances and property." "Property," Kingston repeated, a dangerous softness in his voice. "I seem to recall settling her debt with 5 million in liquid assets. You accepted the payment, Alpha. You sold the indentured contract. Which means you are now here arguing over a moral issue, using the High Council to shield you from the consequences of your cruelty. Are you prepared to argue the legality of enslaving children with me, Barrett? Because I assure you it will be a short debate." Elder Godfrey quickly interjected, sensing the king's mounting rage. "The payment covers the debt, Your Majesty, but the petition remains. Lorelei's mental state is now the issue. We demand you produce the girl. She must be returned to Alpha Barrett's custody, pending a neutral mental health evaluation. If she is deemed unstable, she must be isolated. You want to see her?" Kingston leaned back, a dark, primal smile curving his lips. "You demand it." Godfrey gripped his staff tighter. "We do." "Very well." Kingston's eyes burned gold as he looked toward the massive double doors. "Open them." 2 guards sprang to obey. As the doors swung open, the scent of the throne room stale paper and polished stone was instantly annihilated by a flood of ozone wild lavender and raw unrestrained alpha power. Lorelei entered. She didn't hurry. She didn't skulk. She glided. She was dressed in a gown of shimmering silver silk, draped to accentuate the new powerful musculature beneath. Her skin had shed the grey pallor of the cellar, now radiating health and inner light. But it was the subtle shift in the room's atmosphere that was the most profound. As she passed the council enforcers, every single one of them, without conscious thought, instinctively dipped their heads in submission. The Omega was gone. A queen was walking among them. Barrett's smugness evaporated, replaced by a ghastly, petrified horror. He stumbled backward, his eyes fixed on her. And then he saw her eyes. They were no longer the dull brown of a defeated Omega. They were a brilliant electric violet. Elder Godfrey gasped the sound, a ragged wheeze, and the heavy staff fell from his withered hand, clattering noisily onto the marble. "Violet," Godfrey whispered, his voice trembling in disbelief. "The moon blessed." Lorelei stopped 10 feet from Barrett. Her dark hair cascaded over the silver silk, but her gaze was relentless, boring through him. "You said I was a defect." Lorelei's voice was calm, yet impossibly strong, the duality of her human and wolf voices layered together. "You told the pack I was weak." I didn't know," Barrett stammered, his body shaking uncontrollably. "It was a mistake, a medical error, a rare pigment, I swear." It was no error. A precise voice cut through the rising panic. Dr. Vaughan Kingston's royal healer stepped forward from the shadows, holding his glowing medical tablet. "I have the toxicology report, elders. This woman has been microdosed with aconite and silver nitrate for 10 years. The purpose was clear chemical suppression. The purchase orders for the chemicals were signed by Alpha Barrett." A collective gasp swept through the council members. Poisoning a wolf was a grave offense. Poisoning a royal heir to suppress her power was treason against the species. Lorelei walked closer, her eyes blazing with the force of 10 years of suppressed memory and pain. She looked straight into Barrett's soul. "You poisoned me to keep my wolf sleeping. You poisoned me because you knew who I was, and you knew what I had seen. Lies you're hallucinating. Barrett shrieked, backing away, until his heels hit the stone wall. "I saw you," Lorelei stated the memory, overriding her survival instinct. Her voice broke slightly, not from weakness, but from the searing pain of the truth. "I was hiding in the closet when the rogues didn't arrive. You shot my mother first, then my father. You looked down at him and you laughed. You told him kings bleed just like dogs. That's not the memory of a skirmish. That is the memory of execution." The council was paralyzed. They had come to accuse the king of abduction. They were leaving having witnessed a declaration of high treason. Lorelei lifted her chin, her violet eyes locking on to Elder Godfrey. Her voice was now steady, resonant with the weight of ancient law. "Elder Godfrey," Lorelei said, "I am Lorelei, daughter of the royal line, now awakened. I claim the right of challenge." The demand struck the room like thunder. The right of challenge, a declaration of blood feud that superseded all council law, requiring immediate violent settlement. Godfrey, trembling slowly, lowered his head again. He no longer saw a victim. He saw his queen. "The moon-blessed outranks us all," Godfrey declared the words, scraping his throat. "If she demands the right is granted." Alpha Barrett knew that the moment Lorelei stepped out of the cellar, he was doomed. But now he knew the executioner would be the girl he had abused. The sheer naked terror of his situation consumed him. His fate was sealed, and the only choice left was how he would die. The sight of Lorelei radiating the power of a long-suppressed royalty sent a shockwave of animal terror through Alpha Barrett. His composure, meticulously rebuilt after the cellar revelation, shattered completely. He pulled a concealed, jagged silver knife from his boot, the weapon of a coward and a traitor, and lunged. Not at Lorelei, whose power felt like a physical wall, but diagonally toward King Kingston, hoping to cause enough blood and chaos to make an escape. It was a fatal miscalculation. Barrett had underestimated the speed of a newly awakened, poisoned Alpha. Before the king's highly trained guards could twitch, before Kingston himself could even rise from the throne, Lorelei was a blur. She moved with a silent, blinding velocity, intercepting Barrett mid-stride. Her hand shot out, not in a feminine strike, but with the focused, brutal efficiency of a 1,000-year-old wolf spirit. She caught Barrett's knife-wielding wrist. The air was momentarily filled with a sickening crack as she twisted his arm, deliberately shattering the radius bone. Barrett screamed the high, panicked sound of a human, not a wolf. The silver knife clattered uselessly onto the black marble floor. Lorelei didn't let go. She used his momentum against him, delivering a precisely placed kick that snapped the knee joint, forcing him to the ground in a crippled heap. She maintained her grip, twisting his arm behind his back. Then, with preternatural strength, she hauled him up until her hand was wrapped around his throat, lifting him until his toes desperately scrabbled for purchase on the smooth, unforgiving marble. She stood over the wretched Alpha, the silver gown seeming to glow under the light of her violet eyes. The sheer, devastating power radiating off her was overwhelming. The council enforcers standing rigid against the wall were bowed low, their training, fighting a losing battle against the instinctive need to submit. "You wanted a monster." Lorelei's voice was a low snarl, possessing the terrifying layered resonance of the human and the alpha wolf speaking in unison. "You made one." "Mercy!" Barrett choked out his face, purple, his eyes bulging. Tears streamed down his soot-stained cheeks, mixing with mucus and fear. "Lorelei, please, I raised you. I fed you. I gave you shelter. You fed me poison," she roared. The force of her anguish was so potent that the plaster on the ceiling above them flaked and rained down. "You fed me lies. You killed my parents for land and power, and then locked me away to rot." Her wolf screamed for the release of vengeance. Rip, tear, kill the murderer. But Lorelei felt a strange, cold clarity, a royal command overriding primal rage. She needed justice, not merely a clean death. She dropped him. Barrett fell in a heap, gasping and clutching his mangled arm. He was broken, terrified, and utterly exposed. Lorelei stood back, looking down at the quivering man. "Death is too easy for you," she pronounced, her voice now dangerously calm. "You wanted to bury me in the dark. You wanted to make me a nobody. That is where you will go." She turned to Elder Godfrey. "I invoke the royal command. Strip him of his rank, strip him of his wolf, sever him from the species." Godfrey, still trembling but obedient, bowed his head so low his thin hair swept the floor. "As you command, your majesty." Two enforcers, moving slowly, as if walking through cement, dragged the whimpering Barrett to the center of the hall. Elder Godfrey placed his hands on Barrett's temples and began the ancient, chilling Latin chant of severance. "No, no, kill me, don't take my wolf. Please, I beg you." Barrett's screams were agonizing, desperate pleas. To be severed was to be eternally lonely, stripped of instinct, strength, and life purpose, a horrific fate worse than any physical death. As Godfrey finished the ritual, a dark, smoky shadow was violently ripped from Barrett's chest, dissolving into the air with a sound like a tortured phantom. Barrett collapsed, his eyes wide, vacant and filled with a profound, desolate emptiness. He was a human shell. "Take him to the mines," Lorelei ordered, her voice emotionless. "He will work in the perpetual dark without ventilation for the remainder of his worthless life. And every copper coin he mines will go to the families he oppressed." Kingston's eyes, full of admiration, flicked to Sloane, who was weeping uncontrollably, clutching her father's dropped silver knife. Sloane crawled forward on her hands and knees. "Lorelei, please, I was just doing what he told me. We're sisters in a way. Please don't banish me." Lorelei looked at the girl who had so casually administered her poison, who had delighted in her misery. "We are not sisters," Lorelei said, her voice a whip. "You are banned from all civilized territories. You will be marked as a rogue. You will live without aid or pack until you die. If you survive the winter, perhaps you will learn the true meaning of cold." The guards dragged the sobbing, defeated father and daughter from the hall. The silence that settled was vast and absolute. The council members remained on the floor, their heads bowed, processing the sheer, sudden transfer of power. Kingston finally rose from the throne. He descended the steps, his golden eyes filled with an intensity that burned. He reached Lorelei, not touching her yet, but standing close enough for their auras to mingle. "You showed them mercy," Kingston murmured, his voice thick with awe. "More than I would have. But you gave them justice." Lorelei let out a slow, shaky breath. "It took everything I had not to tear him apart." Kingston smiled. He took her hand, the strong, lethal hand that had just defeated a tyrant, and raised it high for the council to see. "Behold!" Kingston's voice boomed, resonant with the force of his authority. "Lorelei of the moon-blessed line, the true queen of the wolves." The shout of allegiance from the council and the staff shook the foundation of the fortress. Later, wrapped in a plush robe, Lorelei stood on the king's personal balcony, looking out at the vastness of the obsidian peaks. The full moon was a brilliant disk, reflecting off the snow like liquid silver. She felt exhausted, yet fiercely alive. Kingston wrapped his arms around her waist from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. The comforting scent of cedar and ozone enveloped her. "This changes everything," he whispered, his bond with her humming. Every pack will be coming to pledge allegiance to you. You just became the most powerful woman in the world." Lorelei leaned back into him, resting her head against his. "I don't care about the world," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I just wanted to be found. I just wanted them to stop hurting me." Kingston turned her around gently, holding her face between his large hands. His eyes held the promise of an eternal home. "You were never lost, Lorelei. You were just waiting for the right moment to rise." He lowered his head and kissed her a deep, protective, passionate kiss, sealing the end of her suffering and the start of their reign. The Omega was gone. The Queen had risen, and the world would never be the same. What a journey from the coal cellar to the throne. Lorelei finally got the justice she deserved. Barrett is rotting in the mines, and Sloane is facing the harsh reality of the rogue lands. But as Kingston said, this is just the beginning. The return of a moon-blessed queen will attract attention, and not all of it will be good. There are ancient enemies waking up in the shadows who don't want the true lineage to return. If you loved this story and want to know what happens next, if you want to see Lorelei and Kingston build their empire and fight the ancient evils coming for them, smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications. If this video gets 10,000 likes, I will write The Queen's War, where Lorelei has to lead an army for the first time. Thanks for watching and keep howling.